those of you who don't know me, I am Julie Richard. I'm the CEO of Sedona Arts Center, and I just want to welcome you all here today. Thank you for coming. We have a great turnout. It's pretty terrific. We're really excited to be hosting this event today. This has been a long time coming. We have worked hard at leading this study on behalf of the city, and I think you're going to all be really impressed with the results. I think you're all going to really enjoy Randy. He's amazing. But before he gets started, I have several things to run through. But first of all, the City of Sedona and the Sedona Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau were the sponsors of this study. So let's give them a round of applause. And then I need to also thank the Arizona Commission on the Arts and the Arizona Citizens for the Arts. We have a couple of the representatives from the Commission, Chris Elliott and Serena Estrada from the Arizona Citizens. They're actually the sponsors of Randy's tour around the state. So they are the ones carting him from Flagstaff to Yuma to Tucson to Nogales and everywhere in between. So yeah, they're on a marathon. But thank you both for coming and for managing all of this. I want to thank our staff and board for everything that they do to make all of our events happen. So if you guys would raise your hands and just be acknowledged, give them a round of applause. And now I'd like to bring up Mayor Scott Jablow to just say a few words. Thank you, Mayor, for coming and doing this. I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate being invited. This is fabulous. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. The City of Sedona is proud to have partnered with the Sedona Arts Center and the Chamber of Commerce to complete the Arts Economic Prosperity Study for the first time. We are impressed with the results for Sedona, a city that is animated by the arts, which reinforces the increased investment the city is committing to for the arts sector for FY25. For a city of our size, with a population of just less than 10,000, there are only 5 smaller study regions in the pool of 373. That's a nationwide group, and yet we rank 87th in total in the economic impact. Pretty cool. No other city our size came close to matching the economic impact of Sedona. Pretty impressive statistics. I'm excited to hear what Randy has to say today about this study overall. And thanks again to the Sedona Arts Center for taking the lead on such an important topic for our city. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Julie Richard for what she does here, and she's just an inspiration to me, and the energy that she has performed for so long, and what she does for our city. So I'm going to thank you. Can we just have a round of applause for Julie?
Thank you. I didn't write that last part, by the way. The $5 is coming. All right, and now I'd like to introduce Dr. Bruce Peak, who is the chair of our board, to say a few words as well. He probably collected a few surveys along the way, too, for us.
I think I did. My comments will be very short. Thank you, Scott. Scott has already said a number of things that I was going to go over, so I won't do them again. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to also welcome everybody here today for this event. The AEP6 study has been so important in so many ways. One of the biggest ways is the message that it is sending to our community as to the economic impacts of the arts and to our elected officials. And I'm so pleased to hear that the city is committing to that reinvestment that we need in the arts. The pandemic hit everybody so very hard. And so now we're seeing resurgence. Things are starting to come back, but that reinvestment is very important. Sedona Arts Center has a strategic plan, and part of our strategic plan, our very first goal, was to supply leadership to the greater Sedona region, the state of Arizona, and beyond, that's driven by excellence in the arts and cultural expression, learning, and participation. This program is one of many that we've had, again, thanks to Julie of what she has set up over the last year. So I hope you enjoy it, and again, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Bruce. of our study, I was so excited. I was extremely pleasantly surprised. Like the mayor said, not only are our numbers the highest for any city of our size in the country, but in addition, our attendance numbers blow away the national average. And Randy's going to talk more about this, but I think repeating it is worth it. In Sedona, attendance by tourists is 10% higher than the national average, and Sedona's local attendees spend $41.55 compared to $29.77 nationally. And our tourists spend a whopping $159.91 compared to $60.57 nationally. That's really, really impressive. And it really does blow away anybody else's numbers of any city of our size. I'd like to thank the City of Sedona and Nancy Latanzi, Emerson Theater Collaborative and Arts Academy of Sedona, Camilla Ross, the Sedona Heritage Museum, Nate Myers, and the Sedona International Film Festival and Pat Schweiss for collecting audience surveys. Let's give them a huge round of applause. And I'd also like to thank the following organizations for filling out the organization surveys. All of these numbers go together in helping to get our numbers. So the City of Sedona Arts and Culture Department, the Emerson Theater Collaborative, Sedona Arts Center, Sedona Arts Festival, Sedona Chamber Music Society, Sedona Historical Society, Sedona International Film Festival and Workshop, the Sedona Visual Artists Coalition, the Verde Valley Sinfonietta, now the Sedona Symphony, and the Verde Valley Weavers and Spinners Guild. Distributing, collecting, and filling out surveys is never fun, so your work to make all this happen is extremely appreciated. Let's give them all a round of applause. And I'm hoping next time we do this, because this study does come around every 5 years, that we'll get even more participation with the local nonprofit arts organizations. I just want to say a few more words. I had the privilege of sitting in on a national summit on Tuesday. The NEA held a summit called Healing, Bridging, Thriving Arts and Culture in Our Communities. It was a virtual summit, and one of the things that impressed me about that summit, there were a lot of things that they said that really just caught me, but the U.S. Surgeon General spoke, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and he was amazing. I would love to bring him here and speak on behalf of arts and culture, but he talked about needing to rebuild the arts and culture infrastructure post-pandemic, and that the sector has not rebounded, which is impacting more than just the arts organizations themselves. He talked about the rise in instances of social isolation and loneliness, and the fact that those issues have mortality rates similar to smoking and obesity. I'm going to say that again. Social isolation and loneliness have mortality rates similar to smoking and obesity. It's incredible. He talked about the third dimension of health. So in addition to physical and mental health, there's also the health of the heart and soul. And those are just as important in what he was talking about. And he said the arts address and combat all of these issues. The arts bring joy, and that joy is good for our health and well-being. Of course it is. Concluding with how the arts are essential to a healthy life and why investment by our government entities just makes healthy sense. He was talking about the NEA and federal funding, but this applies at the federal, state, and local levels. So not only are the arts organizations here in Sedona an important economic driver, but we're also essential for your health and well-being, and so therefore it's critical that a greater investment be made to ensure our longevity. And so, now, the moment you've all been waiting for, Randy Cohen. Randy is the Vice President of Research at Americans for the Arts, the national advocacy organization for the arts, where he has been empowering arts advocates since 1991. I haven't known Randy that long, but I've known him quite a long time. He recently published Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, which is what we're talking about today. And he also, well, we know what that is. And he's also the 2024 recipient of the Sidney Yates Advocacy Award for outstanding advocacy on behalf of the performing arts in America, which is really impressive. And he's won a bunch of other awards too. But take it away, Randy.
Thanks, everybody. We've got a good news story to talk about today, and I'm just so excited to be here to share it. And we're going to change the conversation about the arts today, right? We all love the arts, and you just heard a bunch of wonderful reasons, that the arts benefits the arts provide to our community. In fact, we're going to talk about economics and benefits to the economy and economic development, but remind me at the end to come back to some of that arts and health and mental health, because it's just some of the most interesting and important work I think that's happening out there. So yes, right, the arts, they inspire us, they beautify our communities, they grade the places we want to live and work. But the fact is, our work, we're an industry, we're businesses. And that's a story we're going to talk about today. And that gets us away from arts as sort of like charity. It's okay to fund it maybe in good economic times, but not when the economy's struggling. We're going to talk about why the arts are just so essential to a healthy, vibrant community. But before I tell that story, I just want to talk about another story real quickly. And that is one of perseverance and survival and persistence, and that is your story. That is, you are all here today after coming through a couple of years that has been the hardest on the arts industry in this country in generations, plural. We all know how challenging it was, right? The numbers back that up, which is always kind of nice, right? Oh my God, here's my experience. And the numbers, yeah, they tell the same story. 99% of arts and culture organizations had to cancel performances. Many of them closed for longer periods of time. Some of them never reopened. Johns Hopkins University, they track employment at all nonprofits in this country. It's about 1.5 million nonprofit organizations, maybe 110,000 of them are arts and culture nonprofits. Arts nonprofits lost jobs at 5 times the rate of all nonprofits. I'm seeing some heads nod, right? And the rehiring really is still very much in progress. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, top economic shop on the planet, they did a big analysis on, what was the impact of the pandemic on the economy. And I'm sure around here in this region and all the great, tourism communities we have in Arizona, tourism took a hit. Lodging, airlines. But they've called one industry out particularly, the arts, the performing arts. Look out below, one of the most severely impacted industries out of all the industries that they study. So if it's felt really rough, it has been rough. Interestingly though, not every arrow pointed downward during the pandemic. There was one that was crazy upward, and that was personal creation. People making art personally. Amazon was writing these articles about this incredible spike in ukulele sales. We did a national public opinion survey. We do it every couple of years. 37% of the American population tried some kind of new arts, craft, music, culinary. It could be any of those, right? How many loaves of sourdough bread, landed on your doorstep during the pandemic? Did anyone? All right, so now it's time for some hands, because we know 1/3 of the room, if this is statistically representative, tried some kind of new art form. Anybody try anything they want to share? Yes.
Poetry.
Poetry, writing, reading, all of it. Yes, please.
Piano.
Piano, wonderful. Mr. Bear, was that you? No. All right, Julie.
Art journaling.
Art journaling, wonderful. Yes.
Alcohol ink.
That is, I've asked this question many times. I always hear it's something new. Wonderful, and we know there's lots more. I, myself, I took up knitting. It's something I'd always wanted to do. My grandmother, my aunts, everybody always knit. And, wherever that knitting circle was in the house, that was the most interesting conversation as a kid, I watched everything on Netflix and Hulu, and I didn't want to get off the couch, but knew I had to do something else, and so I learned the materials, kind of taught myself. A neighbor helped me, learn how to really do it. And I got to tell you, during the pandemic, and you just heard, the words of the Surgeon General, it was so calming. It was so meditative, and just reduced so much of the stress and anxiety, the uncertainty, that we were all experiencing. I'm just so grateful that I did that. I'm not that good at it. I make like the world's longest scarves, but I can't get 2, rows of 18 stitches in a row to save my life. But once, it was time to start getting, out of the house and, out to cultural events. My wife and I so we're in the DC area, and it's like all the wonderful museums, and, it's like, well, let's try a museum. It's a good, safe way to start. And now that I am a fiber artist, that's a laugh line, it's okay, So we decided, let's try the textile museum. Washington, D.C., we've got a wonderful textile museum. We've never been there. And so what did we do? Well, we went online and we found their website. And they were open. And here were their hours and the safety protocol. Wear your mask, keep your distance. Read about some of the exhibitions they had going on. And it's like, all right, this is great. Let's do it for Saturday. Clicked another button, pull out the credit card, bought our tickets. We're all ready to go. Saturday comes, we jump in the car, we drive downtown, park in the parking garage, $10, get my stub from the guy, and on the way to the museum, we stopped and had a meal, right? That's something we do, right? When we go have an arts experience, make it an event a lot of times. There's a wonderful restaurant downtown DC. It's called Founding Farmers, and kind of seen a few heads nod, like farm to fork place. And spent $70. Wasn't the cheapest lunch, but we took our time and did all the nice things. From there, it was about a half-dozen block walk to the museum, and we got in, and it's beautiful modern architecture. We got our program, and I could tell you my first sensory moment actually wasn't like a 1,000-year-old tapestry or an incredible quilt exhibition. It was the air conditioning, because this was August in Washington, D.C. Brutal, hot, humid. So already I loved this place. I hadn't seen anything, So, and then we, enjoyed our couple hours and, walked the museum, heard some talks and exhibitions, and it was great. So, just sort of hit pause right there and kind of roll back the tape, a couple of days to when we decided, well, let's go out to, an arts event. We went online. We went to their website. Arts organizations have websites. We take that for granted, but that means we've got web designers and computer programmers, and maybe we pay for photographers and writers, and we bought our tickets and online. So, now you've got the finance and e-commerce people involved in all of this. The day came, we jumped in the car. We didn't have to drive too far. We didn't use much gas. But certainly some people drive much farther to get there. But we parked in a parking garage, $10. I can tell you, during the week, you can't find a spot in that garage. During the weekend, if it wasn't for those arts organizations, the performing arts organizations and the museums, that place would just probably be closed. Because, there's just nothing else happening there. That guy who gave me a stub, the ticket parking receipt, that's a job. The people who own and manage those parking garages, those are businesses. And then we went to the restaurant, $70, everything's grown within 50 miles. Some of those $70 are going to the growers and the producers of the food. And how about the trucking company that makes those daily deliveries, bringing all the food to the restaurant? Those are businesses that are impacted. The waiter brings home some personal income. The owner of the restaurant, some entrepreneurial income. And then it was off, finally, in this whole anecdote, to when we finally get to the museum, right? You ever notice when you go to an arts event, you're always getting paper? I mean, look, gave you a stack of paper for an economic impact talk. It's a program, it's a flyer, it's a postcard. Printers make bank off of the arts. Because we always use like really great paper, and it's full color and, coated and glossy paper and all that kind of thing. And that means there's a graphic artist in the community that was paid to do the design work on that. So just even the programs. I don't know what their utility bill is at that museum, but right now they're trying to keep the place warm, trying to keep it cool in the summer. That's a big expenditure in the community. When most people think about arts as an industry, maybe they think about, oh, here's a talk from the curator. Well, that person works here. Or they go to a concert or a performance. Those musicians, those actors, those are jobs. But the fact is, our organizations, we also employ accountants and auditors, plumbers and electricians. We've got security staff. We've got marketing and box office people. We employ a whole range of industries across the community. Nobody really thinks about that when they think about the arts. So this is the story we're going to talk about today. This is the narrative, and there's numbers to go with this story, and it's a really important story to tell, and that's Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. Looking at the economic impact of spending by nonprofit arts and culture organizations and the event-related spending by their audiences. All right, so what did we do? Well, it's a national study, 373 regions from across the country. There's Sedona. Did everybody catch that technical effect? That was all me. So we were in all 50 states plus Puerto Rico. We studied communities less than half the size of Sedona, as small as 4,000 people, as large as 4 million. It doesn't matter if you're in a small rural community, a large urban city. The arts are happening there. Economic impact is happening there as well. All right, a couple things about the study. We focus on nonprofit arts and culture organizations. Now you're looking at it, it's like, how he's doing that Washington, D.C. thing with the fingers, nonprofit. What does that mean? Well, we all, we know what our nonprofit organizations are, but also included in this study might be a municipally owned performing arts center or a state-owned museum. Sometimes, the arts programs that are delivered to the community, are at a library or a social service organization. So we would capture those programs as well. What's not included are our commercial galleries, the Hollywood motion picture industry, architecture firms, the university drama department. Those are all really important parts of our cultural ecology, but not part of this study. And why is that? Well, typically when the city, the county, the state, the federal government funds the arts, those dollars are going to these nonprofit arts and culture organizations, and it's an appropriate question to ask. What's the public getting? What's the ROI on that investment? Cultural benefits, sure. Everyone will, accept that. But now we can also talk about those economic benefits as well. And the fact is, you talk to most legislators and you ask them what their priorities are, they'll tell you, jobs, jobs, and jobs. So we're going to connect our arts and culture product to that priority. So we take a very conservative approach to economic impact. We only use data from the organizations that provide it. You heard we surveyed 14 organizations in Sedona. 10 of you responded, and thank you again for that. That's the data that we go with. There's actually more, and that's better than the national averages, by the way, which is about 50%. So good response rate. But there's even more money, in economic activity happening. But again, conservative, reliable approach. And lastly, reliable. We work with a team of economists. We use an in-plan methodology that customizes an economic model specifically for Sedona. And why do we do that? It takes 1 million calculations, by the way, just for these couple numbers in Sedona. We do that because $50 spent here has a different economic impact than $50 spent in Phoenix or Mesa or San Diego, anywhere else. So this is very localized, very reliable, and it's a conservative approach. All right, so that's what we did. Everyone get me with me so far? All right, well, so what do we find out? Let's get to some numbers. And, here we are, we're working our way out of the pandemic. Things are, better now than they were then. That number is composed of 2 figures. First, spending by the organizations. Those 10 organizations, $5.9 million in spending. That right there is a myth buster. Because arts organizations are businesses. We employ people locally. We purchase goods and services from other businesses in the community. We're members of the chamber. We help drive tourism. Our organizations are good business citizens, and that is a story that needs to be told because that is not an intuitive way for most people to think about the arts. We've got to get out there with that. Yes, clarify?
Clarify, please.
Yes.
That 13.5 million reflects Sedona itself, the region, or
Sedona.
just
Sedona. Yeah, to give you some context, across the state, that number is $1.1 billion. So this is a Sedona figure. Thank you for clarifying that. That was a good point.
Is that Greater Sedona or Sedona?
Sedona.
City of Sedona, right? So, and it's just those 10 responding organizations. It'd be a little bit bigger if we had the other 4 in there. But we're going to talk about a way, later in the presentation to, keep going and keep tracking the fuller arts universe. All right, so that's the spending by the organizations. Now, arts organizations have an economic impact. I could give you a $5 bill and my economist will chase you around and see what you did with it. Every organization has an impact. You know, the dog catcher's office, the gas station. But few industries generate the kind of event-related spending that the arts do, right? And that was Randy's afternoon date. Finally gets out. And we've all got our version of that. Attendees to the nonprofit arts and culture events in Sedona, $7.6 million of spending. So you add that up, and that's how we get that $13.5 million. What's the economic impact of that? Well, the first thing we look at is jobs. Remember I talked about how important jobs are with so many of our legislators and economic development people. 230 jobs supported here in the city as a result of that economic activity. Now remember, those are jobs at our organizations. Those are jobs also spread across the city as a result of our spending, right? And that also includes the hospitality jobs. So, you know, you've got all the ways our organizations spend money, and then there's, you know, the restaurants and the lodging, and all of that's covered in there. A little bit about arts jobs, necessarily local jobs. This is not an industry that's going to be offshored. Something else is, so they're very localized jobs, but, and again, they cover all the industries across the community. Bottom line, arts, not just food for the soul, it's putting food on the table for 230 households right here in the city. What else do we look at? Government revenue, $3 million even. You know, it's like we're just really close. So rounded to 3 points, you know, even. $3 million in local, state, and federal government revenue as a result of that economic activity. What this shows is that when we're funding the arts, that's just not a one-way street, that the industry is giving back to government. You know, when those dollars aren't disappearing down some black hole of goodness, it's providing revenue that government needs to continue to pay for all those services. So small investment, big returns. That's what we're getting with the arts. All right, let's start to break this down a little bit to the audience spending piece, because this is really where it gets interesting. So 509 attendees, we did a sample across the community. So we got a nice representative sample. The typical attendee to an arts and culture event spends $89.23 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. And so you can see that. Look at all these pieces of the pie. None of those are admission. And by the way, why do we not include admission? It's important. But those dollars are going to your organizations, and then those dollars get spent into the community. That avoids a double count, right? So, yes?
Well, let's just take the Sedona Arts Festival as an example. Why isn't the amount of money they spend on the arts included in that number?
Like the admission costs? No.
They go and they buy a set of dinnerware for $1,000.
Well, some of that might be included under the shopping, for example. So, and this is an average, right? So, you know, some of you might be looking at, you know, lodging. Wow, can you still get a room here for $23.60? You know, and would you want it if you could get it? So this is an average, and just those 10 organizations had 85,400 attendees. So your arts organizations are putting a lot of people on the street who are spending money at local businesses. And so this is an average. Not everybody's got a child care cost, not everyone's got a lodging cost. You know, for me, there was my expensive lunch, and there was my parking. Other is always fascinating. I'll tell you a quick other story. Nationally, we did 224,000 audience surveys. There was a farmer in Wisconsin who paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. Isn't that great? People are doing what it takes to get to the arts. As Julie was saying, this is double the state average, which is $41.04. It's more than double of the national average. So this is a huge, outsized economic spending figure. In addition to how much did you spend related to this arts event, we also asked folks for their zip code. Because we want to find out, do they live in the two-county region, which would make them local, or are they from outside the two-county region? 40% of attendees came from outside the two-county region. Once again, much higher than the state and national averages. And then do they spend differently? Yeah, you bet they do. Look at that, $159.91 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. So lots of economic activity related to the arts. Let me give you another number about this non-local spending. So 40% from outside the two-county region, 42% of those folks had a lodging cost. They averaged $269 per person. Wow. So, right, you know, the numbers, you get that head in the bed, that's when the cash registers really start ringing. And I'll tell you something else, we only count one night of lodging. You know, I'm sure there's other tourism data that you all read and report on here that show larger spending numbers. But again, we're asking about this one arts event that somebody attended and the money they spent related to that. So again, a very conservative, reliable approach. So the arts, you know, putting heads in beds and cheeks in seats and derrieres and cafe chairs, you know, so arts organizations are good for local businesses. One other thing we asked those folks, we asked the non-local attendees a really simple question, which was, why are you here? We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. But are you here on business? You're here visiting friends and family? A little over 50% said, we came specifically for this arts event. So you can really see the pulling power that the arts have, right? Drawing people in the community and spending it right here at local businesses. So a really good news story for the arts. I want to talk a little bit about social impact, but actually, you know, I just gave you a lot of numbers. Was everybody good with that? Everybody, that makes sense to everyone? All right, yes?
I just wanted to question you talked about jobs. But,
Yes.
In the performing arts, we spend a lot of money and our resources and get support from the Arizona Commission on the Arts on providing contract work to the artists coming from out of the area. So is that shown there? For instance, we brought, say, 30 ballet dancers from all over the country here recently. We were doing that to provide work for them during these very difficult times as well.
Yeah,
Part of
interesting.
our mission.
Yeah, and that's a great mission. Interestingly, we in the surveys of the organization, some of you may remember, we actually asked you to call out non-local artists or arts organizations you may bring in as presenters. And that actually gets pulled from your local economic analysis, because the assumption is if Miami City Ballet comes through town, most of those dollars are going back to the Bank of Miami. There are some local expenditures here that get picked up in other ways, but we pull a lot of the non-local artists and arts organizations out of the analysis. Yeah, so some of that would come out with your lodging expenses and that kind of thing. So yeah, yes.
I think that number you had at the bottom, the 48.
Yeah, you know what? It was a little different. There's
9.
Yeah, so this is just under, so 49.8%. So that's right about 50% of those non-local attendees came specifically for the arts. We asked another question, and that was, what if this arts event wasn't taking place? We asked the locals this. Would you have stayed home, done something else, gave people a bunch of options? 50.3% said, so just slightly over, I transpose those two numbers, said they would travel to a different community to attend a similar kind of arts event. So that's, another interesting statistic, right? People got that arts and culture itch, they're going to scratch it, and they're going to spend it here, or they're going to do it somewhere else. So, thanks for catching that. Now, none of us got into the arts business because it was good for the economy. We may be thinking about what we're going to do this weekend and looking at the options. Probably we're going to pick this because it's got the best economic impact. Probably not part of the decision-making tree, right? It's the arts, what they do for us as people, and and our well-being and our hearts and souls. And So we added 4 questions this time to look at what the arts, how people value the arts. And these are all really powerful numbers in the 80s of percentiles, a little ahead of the national averages. But, 85% of the attendees in this area in Sedona said if this arts event is a source of pride and community identity, I feel a sense of loss if this arts event were no longer available. And I think 86%, that last one is so interesting. It's important to me that this arts event or this venue be available to future generations. And what that says to me is, it's more than just like a one-time transactional experience, right? Arts and culture is part of our history, our heritage, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. So there's a lot of value and a lot of appreciation for the arts, for the people who live here, and across the state, interestingly, really strong numbers. I should say this whole study is a 58-page report, just the Sedona one, and if it's not, it will be up on the website. So that'll be on the way. And so I'm hitting a lot of highlights here, and everything I talk about is described and is in that full report, including volunteerism. We asked all the arts organizations that responded about the number of volunteers. And I love, these volunteer numbers. 597 volunteers, over 31,000 hours. Our volunteers are so vital in keeping arts and culture in our industry happening. And you can actually put a dollar value on that too. The independent sector tracks volunteers in the United States. They've got a statewide figure. The average volunteer hour in Arizona, $30.13. So you do the math, that's just shy of $1 million of value, $941,000. Now that's not part of the $13.5 million, because there's not really any dollars changing hands here. But more, it's just valuing of the arts. So I'm in Washington, D.C., as you heard. Washington, D.C., is the land of national organizations. There's actually so many national organizations in D.C. There's a national organization for the national organizations. But, you can make this work for you because these are the national partners on your study. When you download the report and you flip to the back cover, you'll see organizations like the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties, and International City County Managers Association. The national organizations for our, locally elected leaders. Here's where all the tourism people go, Destinations International. If you're a business leader, you keep up with what the conference board does. That's the national organization for big business. Community race and equity organizations like Race Forward. All of these organizations, national partners on your study, because one, they too believe arts, culture, fundamental component of a healthy community, and two, they buy into the methodology and they buy into the results. Trust me, if any of these folks thought this thing wasn't going to smell right, they're not going to get anywhere near it. So remember, when you talk and when you advocate for the arts, whether it's local, state, federal, turn to the back and just say, hey, listen, your national organization's on board with this, by the way. The public gets this as well. Every couple of years, I do that public opinion study. No surprise, 86% of the American public says the arts create more livable communities, improve quality of life. What always does surprise me is 79% of the public says they agree. Arts is good for local jobs, local businesses, local economy. So if we talk about this, the public gets it. But again, it's just not the first thing people think about when they think about the arts. So we got to really get out there and talk about it, tell the story. Actually, before I get there, so that's arts and economic prosperity. And I want to just hit a couple other important data points, and these are also in your 10 reasons to support the arts. So that was nonprofit arts and culture and their audiences. But I want to widen the lens because there's another economic impact study that you've probably heard of, and I want to distinguish these two for you. And that's one that's done every year by the Department of Commerce and their Bureau of Economic Analysis. It's called the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite Account. And so what they've done is okay, we like the nonprofit, that's what Americans for the Arts started on, but they've widened the lens to include commercial galleries, Hollywood motion pictures, Architecture and publishing, university drama departments, artists, import, export, any dollar in the economy that was arts related, they pulled it out. I'll tell you what they found nationally, it's a $1.02 trillion industry in 2021. Trillion with a T, crossed that threshold for the first time. That is 4.4% of the nation's economy. Huge, right? Now what's great is they also do this analysis at a state level. So in 2021, right here in Arizona, the arts, all the arts, an $11.6 billion industry, which is 2.8% of their state economy. That's bigger than agriculture, education, utilities. It's a big industry. It employs about 85,000 people. So again, when you're advocating and talking about the arts, and it's like, well, we got to focus on business and all that type of thing. Arts are business. Arts are an industry. Really powerful research. And they do this, they only do like a couple dozen of these satellite accounts. There's hundreds and hundreds of industries. They only do this for a couple dozen of them. Because how do you prosper in a global economy? Well, it's an innovation economy. You got to innovate. And this is an acknowledgement that creativity drives innovation and arts and culture drives creativity. So a lot of people paying attention to all these arts numbers. Now, here's a number that I love more than, I just want to expand the conversation a little bit. This is in your report as well. And again, this is closer to the reason why we all got into the arts. But what else are we paying attention to in our communities? 72% of Americans say the arts create opportunities for shared experiences with people of different age, race, ethnicity, faith. A similar percentage, arts and culture creates a safe space to have community conversations. 63%, the arts help me understand other cultures in my community. So, and if you look at that 10 reasons one pager, or you download the report, you'll see we've got a lot more in there about personal and community well-being. And we got to be ready to really tell the whole story about the benefit of the arts. Let me give you one more thing here. If you go to when you download the report, and you go to page 26 of your economic impact study, you're going to find the Arts and Economic Prosperity Calculator. And I put up the most plain, basic-looking calculator in this picture because it's that easy. All you need is an expenditure figure and an attendance figure, and you'll be able to calculate your organization's economic impact. You can do it for your organization. You can do it for all the organizations in the community. I'm sure next year, Julie will email everybody and say, all right, not the whole survey, just give me these two numbers. And then we'll update your economic impact study numbers every year. This model that we built for Sedona, it's good for 5 years. That's why we only do the study every 5 years. So when you're out fundraising, when you're out making the case of your impact on the community, now you can talk very specifically about your organization's economic impact. Which leads us to advocacy, and I'll just touch on this. We can get deeper into it if folks want afterwards. But, if you believe, like I do, that everyone in the community deserves to have the opportunity to participate, to engage in the arts, that every child should be receiving a quality arts education, we need a quiver full of case-making arrows. We got to talk about all the benefits of the arts to our community. And again, you'll see a bunch of them on that 10 reasons to support the arts. But then what do? Well, I break advocacy down to 3 simple questions. There's like whole libraries on it. There's a big book on how to advocate. But what's the message? Who gets the message? And who delivers the message? So what's the message? Well, we've already talked about a bunch of messages today, right? Arts, it's a jobs industry. It generates economic, it's an economic development tool, generates government revenue. I talked about community unity and, well-being, and we could also talk about arts education and health and mental health, on down the list. Lots of great messages. Who gets the message? And that's where we do a little bit of our research about who are the decision makers, who are the authorizers in our environment, right? And what do they care about? And that's when you find the right person, you pull out the right arrow, and you let them have it, right, with the arts case. The third message, which some days I think is the most important one, who delivers the message? So they have me up to Capitol Hill all the time, you know, and they know what I'm there for. You know, guys cover up their wallets, ladies lock their purse in the drawer. I mean, you know, I'm there trying to fight for the arts and get more money for the arts. But when I can bring a business leader, a hospital CEO, a school superintendent, you know, then that changes the whole conversation about the arts. Years ago, a couple years ago, we were doing a big advocacy event. We had the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, as one of the presenters. And he was telling a story of how it was budget hearing night for the arts. And it was him as mayor and the city council, and 60 people lined up to do their 3 minutes about why we got to fund the arts. But he said, I noticed that the chief of police was there, which wasn't unusual. It was a city council meeting, but he was in full chief of police regalia. Hat, tie, medals. He said that was different. And after everybody else had done their 3 minutes, he asked for 3 minutes. And went up and said, you know, if you got to take a cut out of the arts budget, I'd rather you just took it out of my public safety budget. Because when they do their job well, it makes my job easier. I mean, right? Can you imagine we had 1,000 mayors, police chiefs on that message? So, who delivers the message? And then lastly, the golden rule. No numbers without a story, no stories without a number. We need both. Arts were full of stories. It could be as simple as, here's all the money I spent, you know, $89 going to an arts event. Or here's all the people in my community, you know, that we employ. Or, you know, a young person whose life was transformed. Tell the story and then follow it up with the numbers. So let me wrap up here because it's easy for people to take the arts for granted, to assume they're always going to be there. And as an example of that, this was a picture from Paris in 1913. Bad news at the Louvre. The Mona Lisa got stolen, which is back in the news again, but it took them 2 years to get the Mona Lisa back. But in the 2 years that it was missing, more people went to see where it had been hanging, you know where this is going, than saw the painting in the previous 14 years. We've got to be out there. We've got to be championing the arts all the time. We've got to be mobilizing others to tell their story about the arts. Everything you do to support the arts is important, and you're important for doing it. Thanks very much.
Do you want to take questions?
Sure, yeah.
Did you separate out the economic impact of performance-type arts versus visual arts?
No, so did we separate? Yeah, so did we separate performing and visual arts? No, we look at it's just a whole community impact study. So we don't separate that. Good question. Anyone else?
Any other questions?
Yes, please.
This is just a comment. After that wonderful number you had at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, over
9.8.
Yeah.
Right? It's been my experience that number gets poo-pooed. Oh, they were already in a hotel, so they came to your event. Having that data is extremely important because it proves that that's flat out not true.
Yeah, it's the why are those non-locals here? And it was 49.8%, 50%. Half of those attendees from outside the two-county region came for that arts event. Very specifically, because we gave them all the typical reasons people travel, and that's what they chose. Yeah, please.
What do you think? I think it was like your first slide that you showed the whole entire country and where the arts is spread out.
Yeah.
And it looked like the East Coast, especially like North Carolina, was like filled with all those like little dots.
Yeah.
Can you explain like why so much is happening on the East Coast versus
Yeah, so that's actually just all those dots represent communities that participated in the study. And there were a couple state arts agencies who sort of did like Arizona did and sponsored a lot of community participation. So in North Carolina, Tennessee, the state arts agencies pretty much underwrote like 30 cities in each of those states to participate in the economic impact study. So we had 9 here in Arizona, so we had really good representation. Yes?
Is there any type of percentage or amount of times that people come back after they come for the first time? someone who's never been to Sedona before, they come for an arts event, they enjoy it, they're like, wow, this was fun. How often do they come back? Is it like 3 other times, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't have that. We're not looking at that. That's a great tourism visitor question.
Because these type of effects are multiplied. Everything
Yeah.
you're talking about here is multiplied every time somebody comes back, right?
Absolutely, yeah. People come once, you have a great experience, you come back. In fact, it's interesting, if you look at the tourism folks, the way they talk about tourism, I mean, it really used to be only heads and beds, but today they talk about today's traveler is tomorrow's talent. People will come to our community, they're attracted to our community, and they like it. It's like, I can work here. And I can live here and work here, because these days you can telecommute, you can live and work so many places. And so there's a real interesting churn happening there as well. So, yes, please.
You asked us to bring us back to the topic of loneliness. And
Yes.
social, and the thought of it's has there been stories about how is the arts impacting our youth as they're being taught in school. Sometimes the money is not being there, and creating this what I consider to be potential customers and potential investors into this whole thing, rather than just being the retirees that actually are funding it.
Right.
And also, how does that impact the threats of the kids and the communities getting together to exchange ideas and the loneliness piece of it?
So you asked about a couple things, youth, children, arts education, as well as the mental and physical health. So the research is so powerfully clear that a student with an education rich in the arts is performing better academically. Better grades, better standardized test scores, lower dropout rates, and those are findings that cut across all socioeconomic strata. It's not an affluence phenomenon, it's not an urban phenomenon. So a lot of really powerful data that demonstrate that. Over the years, there's been a lot of work done with arts programs for at-risk youth. Here he goes with the fingers again. I consider any kid with a school locker, an at-risk youth. But the research also is really clear that young people, even in adjudicated situations or incarcerated situations, exhibit more pro-social behavior, better communication skills with peers and adults, ties back into the education benefits. So there's a lot of research that benefits that. That's the study we did over 20 years ago with the U.S. Department of Justice that looks at that. So there's a lot of really important research that's been done there. And I think another thing about arts education, its purpose isn't necessarily just like to create new artists or new musicians. I mean, that happens and that's wonderful. It's really just to create more well-rounded people. Those are young people who grow up and vote. In fact, the research extends, the longitudinal research of kids who had arts education versus didn't, the middle school years, even in their 20s, there's noticeable differences between the arts involved and the non-arts involved kids. More likely to have some college going, more likely to be in career-oriented jobs. So a lot of real community benefits there. That's what businesses are looking for, creative workers. We work with the Conference Board, that's the National Organization for Big Business. Their research shows creativity is among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance. But there's no typing test for creativity, right? How do you know if there's someone creative? And business leaders in their surveys and the research said there's 2 indicators right at the top. Starting your own company, study the arts. In school as well as personal participation. So there's those connections. I know I'm hitting a bunch of areas, but during the pandemic, mental health issues tripled in this country. The U.S. Census Bureau tracks that. And so we were part of a big international research study with University College London, and we looked at tens of thousands of people, both sides of the pond there, who every week did these surveys of month after month after month about their activities, there were mental health questions, all that type of thing. What we found out is that people who engaged in arts, creativity, some kind of personal expression, again, it could be baking the sourdough, it could be gardening, it could be, playing music or watching art or going to an exhibit. 30 minutes a day showed lower rates of depression, lower rates of anxiety, higher rates of life satisfaction. You know, and there were positive effects related to loneliness and isolation. So, and there's a lot of research that talks about the benefits of arts to mental health. On your 10 reasons to support the arts, that's number 10 there, so you'll find that. And then healthcare, right? This is just, right, what's the message? We're talking about all these messages. So I've got an arts background. I also have a medical research background. I used to work for Stanford. I worked for Scripps Clinic and Research Foundation in La Jolla. When I worked at Scripps, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we used to have live chamber music in the lobby. And it was wonderful. 4 musicians just transformed the space. And patients could walk in, be wheeled in, they could bring their family. Medical staff was allowed to attend. What we all started to notice is that patients that we'd see in their rooms clinically, lethargic, depressed, you know, even with a view of the ocean, nobody wants to be in the hospital. But in the presence of the music, you could see physical transformation. People's eyes got less cloudy, their posture got better. You know, there's like greater awareness, the environment around them. You know, and we think it's like they're getting an IV drip of the arts, you know? Something's happening here. Well, there's this growing body of research now that shows when the arts are part of our healthcare, and about 50% of the nation's hospitals now have some kind of arts programs, shorter hospital stays, fewer doctor visits, less depression, less medication, even evidence that it saves money. So what we're talking about is all the different ways that the arts, a vibrant arts community, is just good for who we are and where we live and what we do. And I mean, for me, the arts aren't just nice, they're necessary. And I think that's the big takeaway here. So I want to pass it back to Julie, I think.
So, wow, a lot to think about. And, you know, I've heard this for years. I've heard all of the data for years, and it's always just reinvigorating to hear it again and be reminded of how important the arts are for a community. So I hope you all take that away with you. And now I need to put my Arizona Citizens for the Arts board member hat on. We have a few messages that we need to deliver to you all. I was asked to say a few words about this year or next year's budget for the Arts Commission. So the Arizona Commission on the Arts budget was zeroed out in the FY25 budget proposal. Obviously, it's not over yet. They're just starting the budget talks. But the Arts Commission is also the only state agency that is not included in the general fund. They have been funded by one-time monies for years now. And every single year, it's a fight and a struggle to get the Arts Commission back in the budget. We rely desperately on Arts Commission money. How many arts organizations in this room rely on Arts Commission money? All of us. It's really critical. So it's really kind of amazing that the Arts Commission is the only state agency that is not included in the general fund. And by not including the Arts Commission, that means that the statewide arts advocacy organization, Arizona Citizens for the Arts, has got to work extra hard to help fight with the legislature to get that money put back in. So in order to find out about all of this as it's happening, if you could please sign up for the Arts Action Alerts, and Sabrina has a sheet with a QR code, and she will help you do that. And she's got handouts as well. We need you to contact your legislators and get them to reinvest in the Arizona Commission on the Arts. Tell them, because that very small investment really yields millions of dollars back to the economy, as you just heard, in so many ways, in so many positive ways. And sign up for those action alerts, and then as things happen, things are happening through the budget process, then you can contact the legislators and just reinforce that process. That would be really, really helpful to all of us. Also, I want to just let you know about Vision and Sound, an African American experience. It just opened today. This is the 3rd year that we've done it, but the 9th year overall for Vision and Sound. Please go check out the exhibit. And we are doing a symposium. This will be our 2nd symposium that we've done in partnership with the ASU Center for the Study of Race and Democracy. They're incredible partners, and that'll be February 25th and 26th. Please mark your calendars and come. There's a little sheet on your tables about that. It was incredible last year, and really, really, really moving, and really, really life-changing, and we anticipate the same thing to happen this year. So please mark your calendars. It's free. You will have to sign up, but we don't have the registration up yet. So be looking out for that, and make sure you sign up for our newsletter so you get that information as it comes out. Also, before you leave today, if you haven't been up to our gallery shop in a while, please go check that out too. We represent over about 100 local and regional artists, and there's some incredible work up there too, including Carol Kahn, who's right back there. Her work is up in our gallery now too. Yes, Holly.
Announcement before, when you're ready to end.
I am just doing that right now. You want to make an announcement?
So,
Here you go.
the mayor,
We have the Mayor's Arts Awards every few years. It's coming up in 2024. And they were supposed to be in March, but we do not have enough applicants for award nominees to be able to do that, so we're going to postpone it for a few months. So my ask of all of you in the arts organizations, there's categories for these awards. It's on the city's website. Please take a look at them and nominate folks for these categories. Some categories had 1 nomination, some categories had no nominations. So spreading the word, we're going to extend the deadline so we can get more nominees, open it up to get more nominees. So nominate worthwhile people. It's a great event, and they're wonderful awards. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. I'm sure Randy is available to answer some questions. I'll be here for a while. So just hang out, go check out Vision and Sound, and go see the gallery shop. And thanks again for coming. Appreciate it.